Do you solemnly swear from the testimony presented will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
You may proceed.
Good morning, sir. Could you state your name for the record?
Jonathan Good.
Your last name is spelled G-O-O-D, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Are you married, sir?
Yes.
How long have you been married?
Might get in trouble for saying this. Little over a year.
Okay. And do you have any kids?
No.
Okay. What do you do for a living? What business are you in?
I work in finance.
Okay. And how long have you been in that line of work?
6 years.
Can you briefly tell us about your educational background, sir?
I'm an FSU graduate.
I'm not going to ask you for your current address, but are you currently living in Seminole County, Florida?
Yes.
I want to draw your attention back to February of last year, February of 2012. Were you living at a townhouse at Retreat Twin Lakes, specifically the address being 1221 Twin Tree Lane?
Yes.
Okay. And is that a townhouse that has bedrooms upstairs and then living quarters downstairs?
Correct.
At that time in February of 2012 when you were living there, how long had you been living there about?
3 or 4 years.
If you could, if you enter into your residence back in February of 2012 at Twin Tree Lane, when you come in, what do you enter into?
Well, it depends on if, are you talking about the house?
I apologize, the house. Yes, sir, I apologize.
You come in right past the bathroom and then the downstairs living quarters.
Okay. And are the stairs, where would they be located in that residence?
As soon as you make your way through the tile by the bathroom, you go right and the stairs are on the right.
Okay. And towards the back exterior of the house, is there a living quarters, meaning like a living room or dining room combination?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a sliding glass door that goes out into your backyard?
Yes.
Do you have a back porch, or I should say back in February, did you have a back porch of that residence?
I guess it would be considered a back porch, yes.
Okay. Tell us what you mean when you say consider a back porch.
It's just a slab of concrete with 2 pillars on each side.
All right. And so you don't actually have a screened-in porch or anything?
No.
It's just a slab of concrete, you open the glass door and you step out and there's concrete?
Correct.
And if you were to step out, then in the backyard, is there a walkway that separates, I guess, your yard and then the yard from the townhomes across from you?
Yes.
Okay. On your sliding glass door, were there any blinds at all back in February of 2012 there, specifically on February 26, 2012?
Yes.
Tell us, if you could, about those blinds.
They were always closed.
Okay. And the blinds, what type of blinds are they? Just regular blinds, or are they any special?
Junky white tall blinds.
Okay. Are they vertical or horizontal?
Vertical.
Okay. And when you say they're closed, meaning the whole sliding glass door, you could not see out into your backyard?
Correct.
And was that back in February 2012 just on purpose, or?
Yes.
Okay. Let's focus on that February 26, 2012. Were you home that evening, sir?
Yes.
And at around 7:05, 7:10, 7:15, around that time, were you home with your wife that time?
Yes.
Okay. What were you all doing?
Watching TV.
Okay. And there might be more than one TV in the residence. Was it downstairs in the living room?
Yes.
Okay. If you could kind of explain to the jury the layout of the living room, you know, do you have a recliner, sofa, and where were you, as best you can recall, where were you and where was your wife?
We were sitting on the couch against the left side of the wall. The kitchen's on the right. It's an L-shaped couch, and we were just watching the TV from there with the sliding glass door being on our left.
So if you were watching the TV, the sliding glass door would be to your left?
Correct.
Okay. And at some point while you were watching TV, I guess I should ask you, when you were watching TV, do you recall what program you were watching?
No.
Was the volume up, or some people watch it muted? Was the volume up?
We could hear the TV.
Okay. And in terms of how loud it was, do you recall at this time how loud it was?
No.
Okay. Did you hear some noise outside?
Yes.
Okay. And was the noise you heard outside such that you were able to hear it inside? In other words, was it loud, or do you recall in terms of describing it to the jury, the noise that when you first heard it?
It was faint.
Okay. And in terms of where the noise was coming from in relation to your backyard, can you say it was coming from, if you were looking out the backyard, to the left, to the right, in front, or could you tell?
No, I could not tell.
Okay. When you first heard the faint noise, what did you think in terms of what was going outside, or did you have an impression as to what was going outside?
The first time we heard something, I didn't think anything of it.
Okay. And when we say faint, or when you said faint, I apologize, do you recall, could you make out anything other than some noise?
No.
Okay. Did you then hear further noises?
Yes.
Okay. And if you could describe to the jury when you heard a faint noise, then you heard further noise, was that like seconds later, a minute later, 2 minutes later? I know you didn't have a stopwatch, but...
Yeah, I believe I stated, I can't really tell the time frame.
Okay.
It was maybe a couple minutes, maybe.
Okay.
But I can't be sure.
Okay. You weren't timing it, I gather. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't time daily life.
Okay. And then you heard some further noise, maybe a few minutes later. What was the noise you heard later?
The same noise, just louder. Seemed like it was getting closer.
Okay. At that time, when you heard, the second time you heard noise, could you tell whether the noise, could you make out any words?
No.
Okay. Could you tell whether it was one individual or two individuals at that time?
No.
Okay. What happened then in terms of what's going on outside? After you heard additional noise, you couldn't make out any words, you couldn't tell whether it was one or two people, what then did you hear?
That's when I proceeded to go to the sliding glass door to look out.
Okay. So you literally got up from the couch, you went to the sliding glass door. Did you like open the blinds and just, or what did you do?
I cracked the blinds to see if I could see anything going on outside.
Okay. Now, are there lights, I'm assuming, inside the living quarters at that time where
Yes.
you were at? Okay.
Yes.
And are there lights outside?
There's one on the back porch.
Okay. Do you recall whether the light was on or not?
It was on.
Okay. Do you need to take a minute to get the drink?
No, I'm okay.
Okay. What I'm trying to ask is when you were looking outside, was your view obstructed in any way either by the interior lights inside your residence or the exterior light?
I would say the screen obstructed it somewhat.
Okay. And as best you can tell the jury, when you looked out through the blinds, let's make sure we have a good description of when you looked out through the blinds, there, you said they were vertical, is that correct, or horizontal?
Vertical.
Okay. Did you kind of just peek through, or did you kind of move like a few, or how, describe
I
it as you...
peeked through one. If I moved a few, a couple of them would fall off probably.
Okay. And when you looked out, tell us what you saw from your vantage point inside the residence.
I couldn't really see anything except it looked like someone or something was out there.
Okay. What then did you proceed to do, sir? If anything.
Under direct reply from my wife not to go outside, I opened the blinds and opened the sliding glass door.
Okay. So you made a fatal mistake and disregarded your wife.
Yes.
Okay.
Sure there'll be more.
All right. I gather she was still in the living room?
Correct. She
And
was on the phone.
I'm sorry.
She was on the phone.
Okay. Was she just talking to somebody, or?
She was talking to a technology service group probably. I think.
Something. I mean, it wasn't related. She didn't call
No.
911 at that point. in
No.
time. Okay. So, but she distinctively told you not to go or go outside, but you disregarded her requests, commands, whatever, correct?
Yes.
And when you say you actually stepped outside, if you could demonstrate to the jury, I guess, or describe, I'm picturing a sliding glass door. Do you have to unlock it and then literally just, move it all, or is it, describe if you could how that...
Sliding glass door you had to pull. The screened in part you had to pull back. And I literally only took one step outside the door onto the concrete slab.
Okay. And when you say you took one step, or do you mean literally like you put like 1 foot in and you had 1 foot still inside?
Correct.
Okay. So you're 1 foot on the concrete, 1 foot still in the house. Are you looking at that time?
Correct.
Okay. What do you see when you look out there at that time?
It looked like a tussle. I could really only see one person, and I think I described it as possibly being some type of dog attack because there are a lot of dogs that walk in that back area, and I could only see, an object.
Okay. What then did you observe after that?
It seemed like a tussle. They were vertical to me, just like the blinds were. And then at one point, I yelled out, "What's going on?" and "Stop it," I believe.
Okay. So you watch football?
Yes.
Okay. You know how football, they have instant replay?
Yes.
I'm going to, as best we can, try to do an instant replay with you, realizing that don't have the, anyway. My question is, you stepped outside. In terms of how long you had 1 foot out, was it seconds? Was it minutes? How long do you think?
Seconds.
Okay. And in terms of estimating, I'm assuming you still didn't have a stopwatch with you, correct? And your wife was not timing you at all?
No.
Is that accurate?
Accurate.
Okay. Can you estimate how long? Was it 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4, 5, 6, 7, or can you say?
In regards to
How long you actually, when you put 1 foot out and you were observing what you were observing?
a few seconds.
Okay. You mentioned when you put your foot out and you first saw something out there, you mentioned vertical. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
If I'm looking at someone in the backyard, they're faced directly onto the ground. So they're vertical. They're not horizontal. They're vertical to me.
Okay. All right. So they're vertical, meaning the same way you are right now in terms of like this.
So they would be making a T with the sidewalk, if that
Okay.
helps.
All right. In terms of the sidewalk that we're going to show you some photographs, how close to the sidewalk was, at that time, could you tell whether it was 1 or 2 people?
I couldn't tell at that time, no.
Okay. How close was the object, we'll call it, to the sidewalk?
They weren't on the sidewalk, but like I said, I could only see so far because it was vertical to me.
Okay. Could you make out anything other than there was an object there?
Not at that time.
Okay. And did the object end up moving?
The object,
What was on the ground? Did it
Yes.
end up moving?
Yes.
Okay. And in relation to where it was first, when you first observed it, to when you described the second time when they appeared, you said horizontal. How far from the original place did the object move? We don't know persons, but how far did they move?
not far, I wouldn't say, just up onto the concrete.
Okay, all right. At that point, could you tell there was one individual there at least, or 2 people?
I could tell there were 2 when they were still vertical.
Okay. All right. If you could you tell at that time, in terms of describing who was on top and who was in the bottom?
I could only see colors of clothing.
Okay. The color of clothing on top, what could you see?
It was dark.
Okay. How about the color of clothing at the bottom?
I believe it was a light white or red
Okay.
color.
And are you going from memory, since you stated it was only a matter of seconds, right?
I don't understand your question.
My question is, you're not making notes as you're doing this, you're not taking photographs or anything as you're doing this,
No.
right? Okay. And so positions changed. How long did it take for the positions to change? Was it just an ongoing process, or was there a stop, or?
It was quick because, like I said, I've only seen a few seconds of what happened anyway. So I would say 10 seconds max total for everything.
Okay. Could it be as little as 2 or 3 seconds?
It could be.
Okay. You mentioned the second positioning, or the change in position, if we call it, they were horizontal. At that point, could you tell there was still 2 individuals, the same people?
Yes.
Okay. And in terms of describing the individuals, are you able to describe their faces or anything, or just clothing descriptions?
Well, going back to when they were vertical, I could tell the person on the bottom had a lighter skinned color. Correct.
Okay. All right. And when you saw them horizontal at that positioning, who was on top and who was in the bottom?
It was the same position still.
Okay, all right. If you can, describe the position of the person on top in relation to the person on the bottom.
I believe I described it as a straddling position,
Okay, and what do you mean by that?
with the legs over the lower part of the body.
Okay. And the person on the bottom, could you tell whether that person was face up or face down?
Face up.
When you first observed now you know 2 individuals, at that time, could you see whether the person on the bottom was face up or face down?
You say when they were vertical?
When you first saw them, when you first stepped out, could you tell at that time whether the person on the bottom was face up or face down?
When I first stepped out, no, because I couldn't see anybody.
Okay. And then at some point when you observed the second time you're talking about, you saw the person on the bottom was face up?
Correct.
And the person on the top, you said, was straddling, I believe you described it?
Correct.
Okay. Could you tell what was going on at that time?
I think at that time is when I thought it was serious,
Okay. What made you think that?
because it looked like there were strikes being thrown or punches being thrown. But as I clarified, due to the lighting, it could have also been, holding down.
Okay.
But there were arm movement going downward.
And the arm movements that you described, would that have been from the person on top?
Correct.
Okay. And you said that was a dark-colored attire of some type?
Correct.
Okay. The person on top, if you can, you're saying arm movement, how would you describe the arm movement?
Shoulder down.
Okay. Could you see that person's hands?
Just appendages.
Okay.
It's too dark to
Okay.
see that type of stuff.
Yes, sir. The person on top, could you tell whether that person on top was actually striking, and here's what I'm going to do, were they going like this?
I could not hear that, no.
Could you hear this?
No.
Could you tell whether the person on top was just holding the person or trying to hold the person on the bottom?
At this point, Your Honor, I would object that's leading.
I think you stated, but your testimony in terms of whether the person on the top was holding down the person on the bottom, could you tell?
I said that could have been possible,
Okay.
as there was arm motion going downward, not just once, but multiple times.
Okay, so you can't say one way or the other, whether, or can you say?
I can't 100% say, no.
You mentioned you said something. Did you yell that out, or did you say please, or how would you describe it? And if you could, as best you can, recreate that in whatever tone of voice you used to say something.
And that's pretty hard going back to that date on the tone of voice.
Okay, was it loud?
It was enough for that I thought they would be able to hear me.
Okay,
Yes.
and again, what do you recall saying to the two individuals?
At first it was what's going on, and no one answered. And then at that point I believe the person on the bottom I could finally see, and I heard a help. And then at some point I said, cut it out, and then I'm calling 911. Is that when I thought it was getting really serious?
Okay, and when you're stating what you're saying, are you doing that pretty quickly, or are you pausing like you are now?
I would say pausing,
Okay,
and I think that would equate to about the time that I said to.
okay, but you're yelling it or saying it loud voice so they can
Yes.
hear? You mentioned that when you first stepped out, I neglected to ask you, at that time, did you hear any kind of yelling at any time from one of the two individuals out there?
Not initially when I stepped out.
And when you did step out and you said something, did any of the individuals, prior to you saying something, did you hear any of the individuals saying something at that point?
No.
Okay. And you mentioned that they said something. Was that after you said something to the individuals?
Yes.
Okay. Could you say unequivocally to this jury who was saying something?
100% no.
Okay. And why is that?
I'm just taking it off of being rational.
And you believe the person on the bottom would have been saying something when they observed you?
Correct. And if it was coming from on top, it would have echoed off a wall instead of coming directly at me.
But can you say unequivocally that it was the person on the bottom versus the person on the top?
Sorry, Your Honor, that would be asked and just answered.
Can you say unequivocally that it was the person on the bottom versus the person on the top that was saying help?
Not 100% no.
Okay. And in regard to the person that said help, if you can, the person that said help, was it help, 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 continuous, or was it, or how would you describe it, more than one?
I believe it was just one or maybe two.
Okay. And then after that, what happened?
That's when they moved up onto the sidewalk.
Okay. At that point, what happened?
That's when I saw them in the straddle position, thought it was getting very serious, and said I was calling 911.
Did you then turn around and go back in?
Correct.
Did you close your sliding glass door?
I probably didn't care about the sliding glass door.
Okay. Did you call 911?
Yes.
Okay. As you are turning around, I guess, and going back inside your residence, or I shouldn't say turning around, just putting your foot back inside your residence, are you hearing any screams or yells for help from outside there?
At that time, my adrenaline was going. I can't remember.
Okay. You know, I neglected to ask you something at the very beginning. When you first heard something and then you stepped outside, the TV, was the volume still going? In other words, did you mute it or did
It was muted.
Okay. The light that you had on outside, did it remain on the whole time, or did you turn it off when you stepped back in?
No, it remained on.
Okay. When you stepped out, you mentioned two individuals that you've described. Did you see anybody else out there?
Not at first.
Okay. At some point later on, did you see individuals?
At the very end,
Yes,
after,
sir.
yes.
When you are stepping outside and you said something, did you notice any other neighbors or anything, even if you didn't see them outside? Did you notice anybody like peeking out or anything, from any of the windows, or were you paying attention to that?
My focus wasn't on that.
At the point where you're seeing the two individuals, one on top of the other, and I think you described a straddling position, can you see the person on the bottom, their hands?
They were at a side view, so I don't think so.
Could, by that, could you tell whether the person on the bottom had a gun out already?
No,
You can't say one way or the other?
I can't tell, no.
Sir, I'm going to play the 911 recording with the assistant, Ms. Waldrop.
Any objections?
No, you don't.
911 Unit, please fire medical.
Stop a second.
Police, I just heard it.
I apologize. I neglected to put on the record what the exhibit number is. For the record, that is State's Exhibit 162.
911 Unit, please fire medical.
Police, I just heard a shot right behind my house.
Where at?
1221 Twin Trees Lane. They're wrestling right in the back of my porch.
You just heard one shot go off?
It was either that or a rock at the window or something. I don't know. The guy's yelling help, and I'm not going outside.
Okay, 1221? You said 1221.
No, 1221 Twin Trees Lane, Sanford, Florida.
122.
1221 Twin Trees Lane, Sanford,
Is
Florida.
that one or two words? Because it's not accepting it.
Twin Trees is 2 words.
Okay, and you can hear somebody yelling for help?
I'm pretty sure the guy's dead out here. Holy shit.
Okay, we have several people calling in also. Anything else that you heard?
No, the guy yelling help. Oh my God. No, there's a guy with a flashlight in the backyard now.
Okay.
I think there's flashlights and there's a guy. I don't know if that's a cop. Oh my God.
Okay, I have several calls, and you just heard, did you hear when you heard voices? It was just one person talking, right?
There's 2 guys. There's 2 guys in the backyard with flashlights.
Okay.
And there's a black guy down that looks like he's been shot and he's dead.
Okay.
He's laying, and there's multiple people calling right now, I'm thinking.
Okay. I have several officers going out there, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, bye-bye.
All right, bye.
Mr. Good, you recognize that being your voice?
Unfortunately.
Okay. You mentioned that somebody with a flashlight, is that what you were saying, that later other individuals appeared, is that correct?
Yeah, it looked like people came around the corner at some point.
Okay. I want to go back to the what you described out there, and I think you described straddling position. And is that because of the posture of the person on top versus the person on the bottom?
It's both, yeah.
Okay. At some point, you also used the word or descriptive words as MMA style. Do you recall saying that?
Yes.
Okay. And did you mean by that what, sir?
As a straddle position like that.
Okay.
It's a common position you would see in a...
So is that like MMA is like mixed martial arts? Is that correct? You watch that on TV and stuff, or?
Not recently.
Okay. But when you say that, are you referring to just the position the person on top had over the person on the bottom, or I don't want to put words in your mouth. What do you mean by MMA?
And the actions of the arms.
Okay.
Just looked like something that I'd seen on TV before, so that's why first thing that came to my mind.
Okay. Could that also be referred to like wrestling, that type of thing?
I don't understand your question.
My question is, did you ever see the person on top pick the person from the bottom and actually slam them into the concrete?
No.
Did you ever see the person on top slamming the person on the bottom's head on the concrete over and over and over?
No.
Did you see at any time the person on top grab the person on the bottom's head and slam it into the concrete?
No.
Sir, back when you were living in that residence back in February of last year, I believe Miss Lauer also used to live there. Is that correct? She was your next door neighbor?
Correct.
And at some point, I believe in a deposition, you actually heard the recording that 911 call that she made where there's cries for help.
Yes.
Do you recall that?
Yes.
Prior to that deposition, had you heard that recording?
No.
Okay. And at that deposition, when you heard the recording, did you make an observation as to whether you felt that was a different cries for help than the ones you heard?
Audibly, it didn't sound the same as what I heard outside.
Did not sound the same. Thank you. Sir, I'm going to show you some photographs, and hopefully, with the court's permission, may I publish those to the jury, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
First of all, State's Exhibit number 1, and again, I'm going back to February of last year, so hopefully you've remembered. Do you recognize this? I guess it's a Google photograph, aerial photograph of the retreat of Twin Lakes?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm going to, as best I can, blow up an area. You were living at this residence right here, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the backyard we're talking about in the sidewalk, or I think people have referred to it as dog path, would this be it right here?
Yes.
Okay. So is the area that you're talking about, am I circling it right here?
Yes.
Okay, and for the record, that was State's Exhibit number 1, and I've just emphasized a part of that exhibit. Sir, I'm showing you now State's Exhibit number 6. Can you make out your backyard on that exhibit, sir?
I guess.
Okay. Would this have been Miss Lauer's residence, and your residence is right here, the backyard?
Yes.
Okay, or the back sliding glass door?
Correct.
Okay. I neglected to ask you about the conditions in terms of the weather that night. February 26, 2012, at around 7:05, 7:10, 7:15 p.m. Is it safe to assume that it was dark at that time, sir?
Yes.
And do you recall the weather condition in terms of whether it was raining, snowing, or what was going on?
Definitely wasn't snowing, but it was very nasty outside.
Okay. And nasty meaning the rain and et
It
cetera?
was raining off and on all night.
Okay. State Exhibit number 7. Are you able to tell there what we're looking at?
Yes.
Okay. And from this vantage point, would this be the, I guess, the dog receptacle that I'm circling right here?
Yes.
And this would be going towards, your residence would be over here to this side somewhere?
Yes.
And I say your residence in terms of back in February of last year, the backyard, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. State's Exhibit number 33, this would have been your residence right here back in February of 2012, and this would have been Ms. Good's residence?
Incorrect.
Okay. I'm sorry, tell me what State's
You
Exhibit
said
30
Miss Good. We don't live in separate homes.
I meant Miss Lauer. I apologize. I don't want to get you in trouble with your wife now. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. Miss Lauers, excuse me.
Correct.
Okay. And for the record, your the street address is right there in the front of that residence, correct? 1221?
That's not the street address. That's
I'm sorry,
the
the
number of
numerical
home.
address to the residence.
Yes.
Okay. And for the record, that is Twin Tree Lane, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Waldrop, I've messed up the exhibit. Oh, thank you. I'm going to show you now State's Exhibit 39. Do you recognize that photograph? And I realize it's a daytime photograph.
Yes.
And the backyard we're talking about, is this right here?
Yes.
And can you see, I guess, do I have the cursor or the arrow, and would have been your sliding glass door, the blinds you're talking about?
That would be the one on the left, actually,
Okay.
if that's what you're referring to.
Yes, right, okay. And okay, all right. And this would have been Ms. Lauer's back porch at that time, back in February of last year?
Correct.
Okay. That's all the photographs I had of you, but I do need the assistance of Madam Clerk. We have an exhibit, the big diagrams that are in evidence. I don't think they're out here. We may. Do I need to get them from somewhere? Okay. May I have the court's assistance, Madam Clerk?
Yes, you may.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Guy. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Mr. Good, I'm going back to February of last year. I'm State Exhibit 139. Did you live at right here at 1221?
Yes.
Okay. And in terms of this exhibit, State's Exhibit 139, back in February of 2012, when you lived right here at 1221, there's a depiction of a person there. Is this about the area where you're describing you saw?
Beginning or end?
Tell me if using this, just kind of point where you, in the beginning and the end, that as best you can recall when you observed something in there and then went back inside.
Yes.
Okay, all right. And you mentioned concrete. Is this the sidewalk we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Good, you went back inside, called 911. At some point, do you hear a gunshot?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall whether that was before you called 911, doing the 911 call, or after the 911 call?
I believe it was while it was dialing.
Okay. In terms of how long, do you know how long it took you to dial? Did you do it, I mean, did you run to your phone and grab it, or did it take you a minute? Did you say to your wife, honey, I did go outside, sorry? Or do you recall how long it took?
Oh, she could see me. No, it was probably right inside. I usually keep my phone next to me.
Okay. And do you believe the 911 call, I'm sorry, the shot was while you were dialing, or you were actually on the line?
When I was on the line waiting to get picked up, correct.
Okay. If I may have a moment, Your Honor. When you went back inside and you heard a gunshot, prior to that, did you hear any more yells for help at all?
I don't think I was even focusing on that.
Okay, you were just focusing on calling 911?
Yes.
Okay. In terms of I think you stated 3 cries for help or 3 statements of help when you went outside and there was 2 people there?
I think I stated 1, 2 maybe.
Oh, okay, I apologize.
Could have been
1 or 2.
possibly 3. I don't know.
Okay. Don't want you to guess, but you're definite 1 or 2.
Yes.
Was it all one voice or was it more than one voice?
It sounded to be the same voice.
And you're not able to identify that voice, or are you able to identify it?
Not 100%, no.
And to make sure the record's clear, what you heard when you looked out there and saw the 2 individuals and you heard one say help, did you only hear help, help, or did you hear anything else other than help, help?
That's all I heard.
Thank you. I have no further questions at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Romero.